After the encounter with Abel, Marie tells Makoto that they should go over to the workshop since the holy steak production should be finished, but before they could head out, they saw a man appear in front of them, the mysterious person known as Geese Rudolph. The woodmaster approaches them while carrying a large log cross. Makoto remembered the past incident and thought that the same thing would happen again, so he quickly shields the Raslians. The man was impressed that he could stand his ground despite the intimidating pressure. He then asks Makoto where he could find the wood workshop. He figures that he should come along with him and his girls since they were just about to go there as well. He then thanks him for the help and walks off. Makoto got curious and wanted to take a look at Isa's stats, but before he could, a voice from his shadow shouts at Makoto and tells him to stop peeking. The little girl sensed that he's a follower of the goddess Liana and saw that he was trying to look at her father's abilities. After giving him the finger, Geese whacks her head and reminds her that she can't come out when they're in town. The girl was upset and tried to tell him what Makoto was doing. The woodmaster already knew what he was doing but didn't mind it at all. He told the girl, Milla, to go back to his shadow. After resisting, she eventually went back. Geese asked Makoto and the Raslians to keep a secret between them since Milla is a pure vampire and that humanity couldn't accept her existence to roam free. Back at the workshop, a lady from the tavern gives Makoto bad news, saying the holy steaks aren't complete yet. He notices the logs behind her and asks about them. She says that they're only test samples but is willing to give him some. Behind the tavern, as Makoto was practicing some moves, Geese walks up to him and asks who his master is, but he didn't have any master at the time. The woodmaster was impressed by his talent and said that he has the potential to learn more powerful abilities, and that without a master he'll soon reach his limits. He then borrowed Makoto's log for a moment and told the girls to step back. After taking a single breath, the woodmaster unleashed a powerful consecutive thrust move. Makoto looked impressed by his capabilities, saying his attacks were covered in glimmering light. After the demonstration, Geese offers him his guidance and wants to teach him some techniques. Makoto sees this as an opportunity as he could now have a fighting chance against Abel. 1,000 thrusts later, the woodmaster calls it a day and tells Makoto that they should meet again in the Maze City Lana. Makoto then asks Geese if he could help him in hunting vampires. He couldn't come with him and says that he only hunts the vampires which are Milla's enemies. Makoto learns something about the woodmaster's identity. He was a half-human and half-vampire, but despite all that, he chose to live the rest of his life as a human and stay neutral. A few days later, Makoto was a little upset knowing that he only got 2 holy steaks produced through all the logs they used. Makoto and his maids are riding a wagon followed by Jake's party as they traverse through the forest. They stop all of a sudden. Makoto peeks in front of them and sees that Abel was blocking their path. He suddenly gets a terrifying vision of Abel violating the Raslians. After remembering what happened before, Makoto knew what he had to do, so he grabbed the 2 of them, then proceeded to kiss Kachua and grasp onto Marie's mangoes. Abel lost his chance and finally left them alone. After a close call, Makoto apologizes for his actions, saying it was because of the vision. Kachua didn't mind it but Marie seemed a bit sad, but it turns out she also wanted a kiss from him. They finally arrived at the ancient city. Makoto tells a rumor about the city's previous lord saying that he was a follower of dark magic and kidnaps girls of all ages and was also a vampire. After preparing their steaks, they make their entrance at the castle, but the halls are empty. The entrance door then suddenly shuts close. Jake tries opening it but it won't budge. Makoto tells them to move, then uses his stake to break open the steel door in order to secure their escape route. A voice then echoed throughout the room and alerted their group. It was the vampire that called out to them as he stood by the balcony. Makoto and his party approached the stairs and carefully walked up. All of a sudden, the doors around the room burst open as legions of vampires came out and blocked all of their path. The vampire lord laughed at them with a proud expression. Makoto made a quick strategy and told the girls to cover them while they dealt with the low-level vampires from above and below. He tells Jake's party to wait for the right time and throw the stakes at them. As he sees the perfect moment, they throw the stakes at the vampires and knock them completely off the stairs. After dispatching the vampires below, Marie notices the other group of zombies behind Makoto and tells him to watch out. He then turns around and smacks them away with a powerful strike. The vampire lord was impressed by his swinging skills and wonders which barbarian tribe he's from. but aside from that, he opens another door and reveals his newfound friend to Makoto, and to his surprise, it was Abel and that he had been brainwashed by the vampire lord's dark magic. The vampire found it funny that even the hero cannot resist his mind manipulation, and because Abel is Makoto's acquaintance, the vampire thought that he cannot go all out, but to his surprise, Makoto is already planning to kill Abel. After enchanting his mighty wood with various effects, Makoto noticed that the hypnotic effect is starting to wear off using his god's eye, but he cannot stop his momentum, causing Makoto to hit his crotch. The girls healed Abel's wounds, which allowed him to use his own healing spell, hastening his recovery, but this emotional damage made by his mighty log will not be healed.
Ain't no way that's what's going on, what I think is going on.
Abel expresses his hate towards Makoto and then left immediately. Julius reminded Makoto of his presence by casting some kind of a mass hypnotic spell, causing everyone to commit friendly fire. Makoto killed Julius so that the hypnotic effect will wear off. After everyone got back to their senses, Makoto asked Jake to throw the ashes of Julius outside the sun to purify it. That's when Joseph, Julius' twin brother, appeared, trying to take back the ashes to revive his brother. Makoto told Jake to duck since he is going to throw his hard wooden stake like a javelin, wounding Joseph and angering him at the same time. The other adventurers tries to help by stalling him. Makoto asked Miria to give him a port which is similar to a holy stake. He threw it to Julius, but he deflected it. Then Makoto rushed to him while one of the girls casted Slippery to immobilize Joseph, which allowed Makoto to land a clean hit on his chest using the apport he had, slamming Joseph to the wall. The apport proved to be ineffective because Joseph is still alive because he is a noble vampire, so Makoto resorted on using his giant wooden stake again. Joseph tried to paralyze Makoto, but his god's eye dispelled it, allowing Makoto to deliver the final blow. They spread the ashes of the two vampires and returned the missing children, and then Makoto received a reward from his girls. After that he continued on his day up until the night, where he was woken up by a voice telling him to go to the village square where the goddess Astina is waiting. After an unexpected visit from the goddess who abandoned Makoto, Astina was surprised to see that he has grown so much in just a few days and thought that he was just mere garbage. She saw potential in Makoto in becoming a great hero and that he can become a shining pearl. He then asked why she summoned him and wants her to take him back to his original world. Astina was considering it, but on one condition, and that is to be her disciple, since Makoto is a temporary follower of the goddess Liana. Astina expects him to betray her in order for that to happen. She then proceeds to brag about her beauty and having much more power to give than the god's eye, and he can even have a share of a good quality time with the goddess. Astina then kisses Makoto and says that she can even give him a satisfying experience if he becomes her disciple. Makoto hesitates for a moment and states all the advantages in becoming her follower, like having more power than the god's eye itself, and she is also a beautiful goddess. After that, Astina then encourages Makoto to betray Liana so that he could become her disciple. Fortunately, he didn't fall for her tricks, so he declines her offer and says that it's too late for him to become her disciple. Then he tells the gold digger to get lost, but this made her very angry, so she unleashes her great power and threatens him that she'll send him through the time axis of death, which is a place where he could die in many ways. The attack was too fast for him to dodge, so he braces himself, but luckily he was saved in the nick of time by the goddess Liana along with another goddess. Astina was still upset and tells the two of them to move aside, but Liana wasn't gonna let her do as she pleases. The woman beside her then tells Astina that she'll report her to their father for her behavior on what she's about to do. Liana adds that if she breaks the pact, her father will be disappointed if he finds out. After Astina departed, the goddess Liana then makes a sadistic look on her face and says that she'll use Makoto to dominate her with the power of the god's eye. Makoto thanks them for helping him and asks who's the other goddess. Her name is Mireru and she's the goddess of the lake. Makoto then remembered someone said that there were many people in one town near the sacred lake who worshipped Mireru, so it seems like she was there to thank him for killing those vampires. She was willing to repay him, so tells him to throw something into the lake. Makoto then goes to the lake with Kachua and leaving Marie to take care of the kids. He then throws the log into the lake and hope they turn into gold and silver. After that, Mireru picks the logs up and asks which logs he dropped in the lake. Makoto jokingly says neither of them and says it's the one made of platinum, but Mireru didn't like his joke at all. After that, Makoto then looks at the log's stats and tries picking up the gold log, but it was too heavy for him to carry, so he plans to sell it. Kachua inspects the logs with pretty suspicious methods but is amazed by its size.
Huh?
Makoto raises his flag and asks if she doesn't mind using her hands or mouth. Kachua complimented him, saying that his wood is way better.
Bro, nah, bro. Ain't no.
Too bad they couldn't do it since they're outside. After that, Kachua then requests a kiss from Makoto as a reward, but all of a sudden a voice then came out from the woods. As it turns out, it was Abel with his wounds healed, and at the same time he threatens them, saying he'll pay him back for what he did before. In a moment, Makoto receives another vision from his god's eye. Abel then says that his wounds were healed by the goddess Astina and has come to kill him. He plans to use his power and steal Kachua with his arms. However, another unfortunate turn of events unfold as Makoto pulls Kachua towards him and kisses her with all he's got, so that if Abel tries to kiss her, he'll only be kissing Makoto indirectly. Abel was disgusted and points his sword at them. And at the same time, Makoto uses his vision to get ahead of him, so he throws an explosive rock at Abel, but he blocks it with his sword. Makoto is now at a disadvantage, as not only does he have to deal with his time freeze, but also a magic sword that he wields is quite dangerous. Abel then uses his sword to shoot a beam at Makoto, but is protected by the huge log. Abel tells him to stop hiding or else he'll kill the girl. He then uses a spell called Tornado Blade and puts Makoto down on the ground. Kachua sees her master get beaten, so she tries to get close to him but was slapped by Abel. He then plans to harass her in order to destroy him and then send her to a brothel. Makoto gets enraged, so he charges at Abel using his powerful log. He was surprised to see that he got up quick, but it was too late for him to dodge. Makoto then whacks him by his side and breaks his blade in half. And in a desperate attempt, Abel uses his broken sword to shoot another beam, but it was blocked yet again. Makoto then uses his magic to produce another log and plans to traumatize him by stabbing his crotch. Abel was absolutely horrified and tells Makoto to put his pointy log away from him as he tries crawling away, but the man showed no remorse at all. But just before he could hit him, Kachua tells Makoto to let him go instead.
What are you doing?
Abel then uses his flight powers to escape and promises to take his revenge the next time they meet and violate all his girls. Makoto changed his mind and throws his wood log up his bum, which knocks him down into the lake, and just as Makoto and Kachua are about to leave, it didn't take long as the lake mysteriously bubbles up then burst out. Makoto thought it was over and thinks that Abel will return alive. Just right after the explosion, the goddess Mereru emerges along with Abel in her arms and asks the two of them if they're the ones who dropped him. Both Makoto and Kachua were in a state of shock as the goddess leaves the good guy Abel to them. It seems that his version of Abel is a duplicate from the original that extracted the good part of his soul. Mereru leaves the rest to them, but Makoto couldn't help but find this version of Abel suspicious. After that, Abel then gets down on his knees and apologizes to Makoto for what he did. He didn't want to accept his apology, so he asks Kachua instead. After saying yes, Abel thanks for their mercy and unexpectedly hands over his holy sword to Makoto for all the trouble he's caused. Makoto was surprised and says that he won't be giving it back to him. And after acquiring his sword, Abel was really a different person and wants to be friends with Makoto and Kachua. But there was one thing, Abel mentions about what happened earlier, and this made Makoto really wary for a moment. But turns out this guy's enjoyed the feeling of being penetrated by his log.
Pause.
So from that day forth, Makoto had to keep distance from this otherworldly variant of Abel. Just at the same time he left, Makoto remembered there was another duplicate of Abel and wonders where he went. But not too long after, Makoto hears a scream coming behind him. And it was Abel who's being pulled back into the lake and is begging Makoto to save him, but they just stood there and watched him drown. Now, back at his home, Makoto looks at his stats and sees that he leveled up so much that he's now ranked as a mad fighter. He then sees the ultimate bloodlust attribute and remembers the moment when his girls got involved, so he has to be careful on triggering the skill next time. After that, he looks at himself in the mirror and thinks that he looks cool with it. He then proceeds to strike a pose and say a cringy line, and at the same time the goddess Liana appeared out of nowhere and catches Makoto off guard, as he laid dead on the floor like Yamcha. Liana finds out that Makoto has gotten used to the power of the god's eye, so she came over to give him some advice. She then tells Makoto to focus on the mirror and think deeply on what he wants to know about. After zooming into himself, he sees another skill from God's Eye containing different attributes. Makoto sees another skill called Eye of Light, which is a skill that can shoot a beam from his eyes. He then dreams for a moment but was quickly set back on track by Liana telling him to focus. After looking hard enough, he finally sees the hidden skill of the God's Eye and remembers that he's used one of the skill from when he defeated the vampire. After successfully activating his Eye of Wisdom, Liana sees that Makoto's compatibility with the God's Eye is very high and that she is willing to give him its most powerful ability. She then tells Makoto that if his compatibility is low he won't gain that much proficiency points, but since he's gained so much power in such a short time, he could gain 100 hidden abilities at once. After that, Liana tells Makoto if he has any other skill besides God's Eye. She then explains that if he keeps using a certain weapon or armor, he'll eventually gain a mastery for that specific weapon and increase its effectiveness. This gets Makoto excited, so he tries looking again and expects something like a sword mastery. He was then disappointed after seeing that he's gained a woodlog mastery and is titled as the Genius Woodlog Wielder. He notices Liana's silence, but she's just shocked and says that there hasn't been a human with such a high rank in the last 1,000 years, so she figures that he's been swinging his hard wooden log for so long that it became his mastery, but all he wanted was to have a sword mastery. After that, Liana gets close to Makoto, tells him to look into her eyes. The moment was heated for him, but all of a sudden Marie and Kachua barges in to check on Makoto. Both were completely stunned, frozen as they saw the two of them stand really close to one another. Liana wonders why they just stood there, but the Raslians caught on quick and realized that she's a goddess. Liana then asks the girls if they want to join Makoto's clan. A clan is where a disciple works for an ancestor as blood relatives, and its job is to recruit more members in order to expand the clan. But before that, Makoto would have to be her actual disciple. He thought Liana needed a month to decide that, but she tells him it's not really necessary. Makoto was surprised after being called her son based on the clan's systems on referring to a person formally. After that, Marie asks Liana if Makoto is allowed to get married even after becoming her disciple. She says it's possible and that they could still marry him. The girls were surprised and blushed after hearing they can still marry Makoto. He then asks if he can have 2 wives. Liana says polygamy is allowed in this world and that some of her followers have a harem of their own. After that, Makoto makes his decision and start the ritual. Liana then prepares a chalice and tells him to drink it with her blood and a mixture of holy water until it is empty. Makoto suddenly dreams of himself sleeping with Liana, but it didn't last long as he snaps back to reality after drinking all that juice. After that, Makoto prepares another and hands them to Marie and Kachua so they could join his clan, now that they've become his blood relatives. Kachua asks her what kind of powers do they get. Marie has the Eye of the Sky, to which she can use a crystal ball to predict the future and also has an ability to manipulate the weather. As for Kachua, her power is the Eye of Fire, which is an ability she can use to set her target on fire, and now all they need is a bit of practice. After that's done, Makoto looks at his skill panel and sees that he's unable to use those abilities. Since he has too many abilities, it was a better choice to give them some edge. Later that day, Makoto checks his surroundings if there's anyone around him. He then proceeds to use his God's Eye and shoot his eye beam on a tree. After seeing that the impact was weak, Makoto stood there in disappointment, thinking his Eye of Light was kinda pathetic, and from that point he did some extreme training. On their way back to Lana City, they have been given a substantial amount of wooden logs. The carriages they are riding were provided by the mayor of One City. Makoto looked around to see if there is a chance of them getting ambushed. Miria said her ability to detect ambushes is not yet good enough to be of help. Suddenly Makoto's God's Eye activates and then asked Miria to stop the carriage. It revealed that the bandits have planned to do an ambush right where they currently are. The leader of the bandits are fueled by lust towards goddess Estina, helping Makoto to realize that it was her plan. He first thought about running away, but if they do, it will risk them from getting attacked from behind. Makoto instead asked Miria to make it rain in the general direction where the bandits are hiding, saying that his fortune-related skill is telling him to do this. After giving the signal that will commence their attack, he casted stone bomb against the bandits, blasting them away. This surprised his companions but at the same time alerted them about the attack. Makoto gave instructions to the remaining sisters on how to approach the enemy. While he dealt with them in melee combat, he used a sword which drained his energy more than usual. After defeating the closest bandits using a sword, Makoto asked Kachua to burn the bowstrings of the ranged bandits. But even after all that effort, there are still a lot of them remaining. He asked Miria to cast rain and lightning on the group of bandits, electrocuting them all at once because of the water. The bandit leader commanded to fire a volley of flaming arrows against Makoto. He casted a wooden log shield to protect himself. After resisting the volley without letting the archers set their bow again, Makoto charged towards them using the shield as a battering ram. He almost got hit by an arrow from behind, but luckily Miria is there for the assist. While the spearmen of the bandits got their spears burned by Kachua. Defeating the last of the goons, Makoto turned his attention to the leader, and fought him with the log shield. He deflected the attack of the leader, and using the small peak hole in the shield, he used it to fire a laser-like attack against the leader, effectively blinding one of his eye, and then Makoto slammed him with the shield, knocking him unconscious. He encouraged the other bandits to surrender since their leader is defeated, to which they complied. Makoto thanked Kachua and Miria for their help. After arriving back to Lana, they returned the kids to their parents and brought the bandits to the knights. Suddenly Makoto felt something strange, enough for him to leave Miria and sprint off to the place where he felt something is calling him. After running for a while, he ended up outside a structure that looks like a shrine, where he is greeted with a ghost of a hostile priest. He slashed it with his sword. To his surprise, he defeated an ethereal enemy using a sword. He realized that it worked because the sword is sacred. He looks around and saw there are more hostile spirits inside the building, to which he dealt with it immediately. He thought that since there are spirits guarding the place, something valuable must be inside. He went to the back door and saw another wooden log. Even though he was frustrated that it's another wooden log, he noticed a figure behind the log, and upon close inspection, someone appeared to the log on what appears to be a ferry.
Huh?
With a new character introduced in the story, I will leave it to your imagination on how it goes. Shout out to these homies who requested for part 2. If you liked what we did or want a part 3, don't you forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. Write it in the comments for more. That's it for now. See you later, alligators.
Pause.